You should not say he's an animal. Should not say he's Jacko. I'm not a Jacko. I'm Jackson.
How do you feel when they call you
Wacko Jacko? Where'd that come from? Well, some English tabloid. I have a heart and I have feelings. I feel that when you do that to me. It's not nice. Don't do it. I'm not a...
Michael Jackson didn't simply become famous. He became a phenomenon, and with that came an unimaginable level of scrutiny. For a time, he was the biggest star on Earth. But gradually, the headlines began to change. The music never lost its magic. The records continued to shatter expectations. Yet the narrative surrounding him grew darker, stranger, and increasingly unforgiving. Every public appearance was dissected. Every rumor spread at lightning speed. And before long, many people weren't looking at Michael Jackson, the groundbreaking artist, anymore. They were looking at a version of him shaped as much by media fascination and controversy as by the man.
I am not guilty of these allegations, but if I am guilty of anything, it is of giving all that I have to give to help children all over the world. It is of enjoying through them the childhood that I...
After the 1993 allegations, Michael Jackson finally agreed to his first major television interview, sitting beside his then-wife, Lisa Marie Presley. The moment carried enormous weight because it was one of the earliest times the public heard him directly respond to the accusations. After months of relentless headlines and non-stop speculation, Michael firmly denied the allegations, while Lisa Marie stood by his side, insisting that she believed in him and that the claims against him were false. This wasn't a concert. There were no lights, no choreography, and no applause. This was Michael Jackson fighting to reclaim his own story. He was trying to speak for himself before the world, and the media decided how his story would end.
What is a 36-year-old man doing sleeping with a 12-year-old boy, or a series of them?
Right. Okay, when you say boys, it's not just boys, and I've never invited just boys to come in my room. Come on, that's ridiculous. And that's a ridiculous question. But since people want to hear it, the answer, I'll be happy to answer it. I have never invited anyone into my bed, ever. Children love me, I love them, they follow me, they want to be with me. But anybody can come in my bed. A child can come in my bed if they want.
I can say, sorry, I've seen this. I've seen it a lot. I've seen kids. I've seen him with children in the last year. I've seen it enough to where I can see how that can happen. I understand.
Isn't part of being an adult, and you have a 2-year-old child, 2-year-old boy.
Yeah, let me just, sorry.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that I've seen these children, they don't let him go to the bathroom without running in there with them, and they won't let him out of their sight. So when he jumps in the bed, I'm even out.
But for Michael Jackson, denying the allegations was never enough because the damage to his public image had already been done. Over the years, the media had created a version of him that many people saw as strange, suspicious, and even dangerous. So Michael kept trying to explain who he really was. He repeatedly insisted that he would never harm a child. He spoke about feeling misunderstood and about people trying to tear him down. To Michael, the accusations struck at the deepest part of his identity because he viewed children as symbols of innocence, joy, and hope. He believed he was protecting and helping them, not hurting them. That's why the allegations affected him so profoundly. In his eyes, the thing he cherished most had been transformed into the very thing used to define him. Interview 303, 332. The media also focused intensely on Michael Jackson's appearance, often turning his changing skin color into one of the biggest rumors and controversies of his career. Instead of accepting his explanation that he had vitiligo, many people speculated that he hated himself or was deliberately trying to change his race. Eventually, Michael felt compelled to publicly discuss something deeply personal because the tabloids had transformed his medical condition into a source of endless gossip and ridicule. He pleaded with people to stop believing what he called foolish stories because, to him, those rumors were far from harmless. They painted him as dishonest, strange, and artificial when, in reality, he was dealing with a genuine medical condition while trying to live his life under the harshest spotlight imaginable. Interview 401, 450. To understand why Michael Jackson's defenders continue to question the 1993 case, the role of Evan Chandler remains central to the discussion. Evan was Jordan Chandler's father, but he was also known as a dentist with ambitions far beyond his profession. He reportedly had aspirations in Hollywood and an interest in screenwriting, a background that has fueled years of debate among fans and critics alike. Supporters of Michael have long argued that Evan's motivations deserve scrutiny, pointing to his complicated relationship with his son and the highly public nature of the allegations that followed. To them, understanding who Evan Chandler was and what may have influenced his actions is an essential piece of understanding why the 1993 case remains one of the most controversial chapters in Michael Jackson's life. Interview 503, 645. Supporters argue the case became even more complicated when Evan Chandler hired attorney Barry Rothman and money entered the picture. A secretly recorded phone call and reports of an alleged $20 million demand quickly became major reasons for suspicion among many of Michael Jackson's defenders, who believed the story was no longer just about the allegations themselves, but also about the motives behind them. Interview 656, 811. To many defenders, this raised an important question. If the priority was justice and protecting a child, why did the case become intertwined with lawyers, negotiations, and such a large financial demand? Years later, Michael Jackson was questioned under oath during a deposition, where he was asked to explain his side of the story in his own words. Interview 826, 902. This footage matters because it shows Michael Jackson in a completely different environment, far away from the stage, the music videos, and the celebrity image the world knew. Under oath, he was questioned about the 1993 allegations, the Chandler lawsuit, grand jury investigations, and other related claims. What stands out most is how calm and composed he appears throughout the deposition. He answers carefully, choosing his words with precision, looking nothing like the bizarre or unstable figure often portrayed by the media. At one point, he reviews handwritten notes listing rumors and false stories he wanted to correct. The moment is striking because it reveals how deeply the accusations and speculation affected him and how desperately he wanted his side of the story to be heard. Interview 931, 1010. One of the most controversial chapters of Michael Jackson's later years was the documentary made by Martin Bashir. Michael opened the doors to his home, introduced his family, and allowed cameras into the most private corners of his life because he believed the film would finally show the world who he truly was. But when the documentary aired, everything changed. Michael's supporters argued that the footage had been edited in a way that portrayed him as strange, isolated, and suspicious. Instead of feeling understood, he felt betrayed. What he hoped would restore his image became another turning point in the battle over how the world viewed him. Interview 1026, 1130. Neverland Ranch was presented in a way that many viewers found unsettling, and once again, the public began looking at Michael Jackson with suspicion and fear. Later, Michael released his own behind-the-scenes footage showing Martin Bashir speaking positively about Neverland, praising its atmosphere and describing the experience as kind, warm, and extraordinary. To Michael's defenders, those clips were important because they argued the documentary had omitted crucial context and presented a version of events that did not fully reflect what Bashir had said while filming. In their view, it was another example of how the story surrounding Michael was shaped as much by editing and perception as by the events themselves. Interview 1146, 1252. After Michael Jackson's death, the allegations returned to the spotlight through Leaving Neverland. But this time, Michael was no longer alive to respond. His nephew, Taj Jackson, argued that the timing mattered because a deceased person cannot sue for libel or slander or defend themselves in court. To Taj and many of Michael's supporters, that reality made the renewed accusations especially painful, reigniting debates that Michael himself could no longer personally address. Interview 1305, 1407. Michael Jackson could no longer give interviews, challenge accusations, or defend himself in court. So his family stepped in to protect his legacy. Taj Jackson publicly questioned Wade Robson's account and argued that important details, including Wade's past relationship with Brandy Jackson, were left out of the conversation. His central argument was simple. Too many people accepted the documentary's claims without examining depositions, previous court cases, alleged inconsistencies, or earlier public statements. In Taj's view, understanding the full story required looking at all the evidence, not just one side of it. Interview 1428, 1542. Michael Jackson spent much of his life being judged through headlines, tabloids, and media narratives. Many stories portrayed him as a mystery or an oddity rather than a real human being. Over time, those portrayals damaged his reputation, made people question his intentions, and pushed him further away from the public eye. Michael often spoke about feeling misunderstood because rumors were repeated so often that they began to sound like facts. Instead of living openly, he became increasingly private and cautious about whom he trusted. To his defenders, Michael Jackson wasn't just a superstar. He was a man constantly fighting against public perception, a person forced to retreat behind walls because he believed the media kept rewriting his life in ways he couldn't control. Interview 1613, 1700 hours. Even people whose names became part of the controversy publicly defended Michael Jackson. Macaulay Culkin, one of the most famous children to spend time with Michael, repeatedly stated that nothing inappropriate ever happened between them. His words carried weight because his name had often been invoked by critics to cast suspicion on Michael. But when Culkin spoke for himself, he rejected that narrative entirely. He defended Michael Jackson, denied being harmed, and insisted that his experiences with him had been positive. To Michael's supporters, Culkin's testimony was an important reminder that the public story was more complicated than many headlines suggested. Interview 1723-1752. In 2005, Michael Jackson faced the only criminal trial of his life. After months of testimony and weeks of courtroom battles, the jury found him not guilty on all counts. For his supporters, that verdict became the strongest response to years of accusations and media speculation. The case had been examined in court through evidence, witness testimony, cross-examinations, and the judgment of a jury. And when it was over, Michael walked out a free man, legally cleared of every charge. But while the verdict ended the trial, it could not instantly undo the damage to his reputation. The headlines faded, yet the public debate surrounding Michael Jackson would continue long after the courtroom doors closed. Interview 1817-1832. Outside the courthouse, fans cried, cheered, and celebrated because they believed justice had finally been served. To them, Michael Jackson had survived more than a trial. He had endured years of suspicion, ridicule, and public condemnation. Their reaction revealed how strongly they still believed in him. They saw Michael as a man who had been mocked, accused, humiliated, searched, and judged by the world, yet still emerged from the courtroom not guilty. For his supporters, that verdict wasn't just a legal victory. It was proof that the story of Michael Jackson was far more complicated than the headlines had ever suggested. Interview 1853-1926. But even after the verdict, Michael Jackson's name was never completely free from controversy. The image created by years of headlines, rumors, and media scrutiny continued to follow him until his final days, and even after his death. That is why his story is about more than just allegations. It is also about how public perception can be shaped by repetition, selective coverage, missing context, and endless speculation. Michael Jackson was undeniably unusual, but unusual does not automatically mean guilty or evil. His defenders describe him as generous, childlike,